Hello everybody, welcome back to the Comedic Monk YouTube channel. I am your host today, the Comedic Monk, and I am sorry for a very long time before or since having uploaded a video. I am trying to get back into the swing of uploading videos, but like I stated before, getting ready to go to college. By the way, I got accepted, woohoo. Getting ready to go into college and also having to deal with some mental health issues, nothing too severe. I mentioned this in a live stream, but yeah, I'm sorry I've been away for so long, and I've decided to come back. Been planning on coming back. I've never really decided to quit, but I have decided to come back. Okay, decided to come back and kind of give an answer to a question that I keep getting asked pretty frequently by people in the comment section. And the question that people keep asking me is, how do I know if Anubis is calling me? Can you make a video on it? And people keep asking. And I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I've never been able to find the right words to describe how to know if Anubis is contacting you, because it's not as simple as people make it out to be. From my experience with Anubis, he reached out to me in very unconventional ways compared to other people. And the one common denominator I had was that when I was kind of leaving Christianity, he was the first god that I was like, well, if I'm not in Christianity, I can worship Anubis. And I was still kind of on and off at the time, but that's something I've seen a lot of people who were being called to by Anubis have a tendency to say that, is like the first god, or they've always remembered Anubis. Anubis is one god that a lot of people will remember. He's like the most popular god in the Egyptian mythology. So when I was leaving Christianity, and he was the first god in my head, and this correlated to a lot of other people's belief systems. But the other things that Anubis was doing, like showing up in a wolf form or showing up in multitudes of other forms and leaving me, like he left me a cup that had like a milk stain in it, and it looked like a tomb. And that was actually how I managed to figure out it was Anubis compared to a lot of other things. But he left me like an object, and that's not something that's very heard of gods doing when they leave you signs to let you know that they want to work with you. So my situation was very unconventional. But this is kind of where the question that people ask doesn't have an exact answer. Gods do not reach out to you in the simple ways that people like to think. They all don't. Anubis doesn't just like leave you a skull that means he wants to work with you. It is something that you have to answer yourself. You have to ask yourself if the god is calling out to you. You have to be the one to look into the god and see if this god is residing with you. When I first thought Anubis was reaching out to me, I actually thought it was Hades. And I got really mad when I was more convinced it was Hades over Anubis, because I had thought I was working with Anubis this whole time. That was not true. I was working with Anubis. It was not Hades. But sometimes when people keep asking the question of how do I know a god's reaching out to me, sometimes gods do things that are very similar to other gods. Some people have said like, well, I keep seeing skulls around. Does that mean Anubis wants to reach out to me? Do you feel like it's Anubis? Is it just skulls? Is he kind of appearing in your head? Is he maybe coming in meditation? Is he showing up all over your media? Or is it another god that's being more prevalent? Is it Hades? Is it hell? Is it another god of the dead that might exist, like a Hindu god of the dead? The issue is specifically that there's a lot of things that a bunch of gods, specific things are identified by other gods, or I'm trying to explain this properly. It's not a specific thing. A skull is representation of death, but there's multiple gods that are associated with death. seeing a flower. There's multiple gods that are associated with life and birth. Isis is oftentimes associated with flower and, life. So it's not, don't, when you're trying to figure out if a god is reaching out to you, because this is pretty prevalent with anything, with any god, not just Anubis, if you're trying to figure out if a god is reaching out to you, you have to be the one to answer that question. Because there is no exact way that a god communicates with someone. And in my case with Anubis, it was much later down the line that I figured out it was him. And it was because I couldn't work with him at that time. I wasn't ready. But he came to me when I was ready. He led me up to figuring out it was him when the time was right. Now, your gods, whatever god is reaching out to you is going to do that differently. They may wait to do it. You may be confused on who it is, but you'll know when the time is right. And if you're still trying to figure it out and you're still asking yourself questions, well, all I can really encourage you to do is to stop trying to just define it by one god. If you're getting a lot of skeletons around and you don't think it's Anubis, then look into a different god that's associated with skeletons. Hell, the Morgan, Hades, and then try to see if maybe another one of those gods is clicking or leaving you with some kind of strong energy. Read about that god and see if there's anything inside of you that's clicking. I read a lot about the Morgan. I felt very inspired, but the Morgan was not ready to work with me yet. So also keep in mind that you might feel inspired by a god at that time, but that doesn't always mean that that god's ready to work with you. That's another thing, but we'll have to kind of talk about, I want to talk about that in a separate video. But don't try to get too confused on when I say something like that, because some people might be like, well, how do I actually know what God's reaching out to me? You will know, because when you start to figure out what God it is, that God will start becoming way more apparent. They'll be coming pretty frequently through your life or through your day-to-day activities. When I started figuring out that the God I was working with was Isis, anytime I was getting ready to buy an altar, she would always send a cloud that looked like a phoenix. And I'd always feel very empowered when I would be outside for some reason. When the gods know that you're ready, when the gods are ready to work with you, they'll let you know. And when the gods know that you have found them, they'll let you know. You will know. So to restate the question that was asked, I don't want to go on too much of a ramble here. How do I know if Anubis or any god is reaching out to me? The answer is not that they're going to do a specific thing, and that's how you're going to know. The answer is going to be, is that what you feel is right? Is this the god that you feel is calling to you? Do you feel like you resign with what this god stands for on the base ground? Do you feel this kind of energy? It's always important to talk to the people who work with that god, because they will kind of, when you start hearing how people work with this god specifically, you kind of start to feel very, like, a weird sense. Like when I was first hearing about how people worked with the goddess Isis, I felt so passionate by what they were saying. And Isis is very associated with passion. So if you're, trying to find if Anubis is contacting you, you might feel very calm and relaxed and very grounded. Those are kind of the energies of Anubis. So again, you might want to look around and or not just look around, but ask questions like, go on the internet and ask, what's it like to work with this god? And you'll get a lot of answers from people who work with these gods. And if what those gods are doing to those people somehow hits you, that god is probably calling out to you. So to restate the question, I cannot answer the question for you. There is no answer to the question, because the gods do not work in linear ways. They work in very, very heavily different ways. And it's going to be different for everyone who works with them. And what they do to contact people is going to be different from person to person. It's also kind of been a bit of an issue in the pagan community, because a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, you saw a skeleton, that's not Anubis, that's Hades. or other things, because the god used that to communicate with them, but other gods can do the same thing to get a hold of other people. A god will always do what it knows will get your attention. So don't always look for, again, don't just try to trust what other people say. You have to be the one to decide if a god is reaching out to you or not. But either way, I hope that answered the question in a not overly confusing way. And I hope I see you guys all in the next video. I'm looking to do another video more on how I work with Anubis, or how I work with some of my other deities. Because now that I'm back, I'd like to make more videos. If you guys have any criticisms, you guys have any comments or questions, or if you guys are still confused on the message, please let me know. And I will not hesitate to remake a video. And if you have any questions on other things, I will not hesitate to answer. So, I hope you guys all have a lovely day.